Good evening, folks. Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. It is time to preview tomorrow's game against Livingston at Celtic Park. And my God, it is a must-win after how the last couple of weeks have went. I know all Celtic league games, particularly at home, are must-win, but tomorrow it doesn't even bear thinking about. After how the last couple of weeks have went, we've got to sort this out. We've got to get a victory tomorrow, and hopefully a good one, to try and build back some confidence and close out this half of the season from now to the winter break as strongly as we can, and hope that the additions and hopefully some exits in January can galvanise this squad, because it looks like it really, really needs it. Before we get into it, this video is sponsored by William Hill, Celtic's official betting partner. We ran a competition last week, giving away 2 tickets to that big derby at the end of the month at Celtic Park. And we have a winner on your screen now. You can see the random comment selector, and the winner of the competition was Mazar Yusuf. Congratulations, Mazar, you've won the 2 tickets. We've already reached out to him. We're going to get the tickets to him in time for the game. Thank you for taking part. We will have more brilliant giveaways coming up with William Hill as we move through the season. If you want to check out the match odds for tomorrow's game, you can do so by clicking the link in the description below. As always, 18 plus, and please visit begambleaware.org. Now, Livingston come into this game off the back of a defeat at Pittodrie during the week. They were 1-0 up, and a double from Bojan Majowski turned it around for Aberdeen. They're on a terrible run. Livingston, they're obviously rooted to the bottom of the league table. They haven't won since a 2-0 victory over Motherwell on the 7th of October. This is a game that we've seen historically can sometimes be stuffy. I can remember a couple of 0-0 draws in the last 3 or 4 years, and the performances we've been putting in at home have not been good enough. They've been way off it. And as I say, Livingston are obviously in poor form. They're bottom of the table, so we have to take tomorrow as an opportunity to get back to winning ways, and more importantly than that, not just get back to winning ways and limp over the line and grind it out. We need to put a proper performance on to galvanise us, to give the players themselves, the manager and the supporters some sort of symbol of hope that there's still a performance in them. Last weekend was one of the worst performances I've ever seen at Celtic Park. It was that bad. We've dropped some cheap points this season. We dropped 2 points at home to St Johnstone when they were rooted to the bottom of the league. We dropped points against Motherwell at Celtic Park as well, when Motherwell were going through the poor form. In fact, they're still actually going through that form. Motherwell, I don't think they've won a game since, and they managed to come to Celtic Park and get a draw. But last weekend, to get beat comfortably at home by a team like Hearts, who haven't been excellent by their own standards this season, was very, very damning on the manager, on the players, on where this team is at. And I'm concerned about the messages the manager's been putting out in press conferences and full-time interviews, questioning the players' desire. He's been questioning their quality all season. I think he singled out Matt O'Reilly, Callum McGregor and Liam Scales last week as people who he was omitting from not having the right desire and the right attitude and work rate. But I don't think that sets a good tone for the rest of the squad, because the rest of the team would have heard that. I don't think that is good for morale. I don't think it's good for the spirit in the dressing room. And I think we look like a team short of confidence. And the manner we lost that game in last week was absolutely appalling. In the second half, you're thinking we're going to have an onslaught and really pin Hearts back, and we didn't. We had 1 or 2 chances, but we never really looked like scoring. We could still be playing right now, and we wouldn't have scored. It's extremely concerning, and I don't know how we fix it. We certainly don't fix it quickly, because this is the same squad of players that we've had all season. And the concern for me is we've talked a lot about the injuries in terms of Maeda, Abada, Hatate being the 3 main players that have been out. Maeda came back off the bench last week. Abada's still to come back. Hatate's still to come back. I think the situation is that bad that even the addition of those players, I don't think, can turn it on its head. I think it's deeper than that. I think the problems are deeper than that. I think that someone like Abada has hardly been. He's always been a goal scorer since he arrived at the club, but there's always been question marks about his wide play as well, and he's not always been the most consistent. So it's hardly like you're bringing back someone who you know is going to put in 8s and 9s and 10s every week. That's not what Liel Abada's like. Hatate, yes, excellent. But even at times this season, I know he's been bogged down by injuries this season, but even in the early period of the season where he was fit, there was some debate about where Rodgers seen him fitting in and what his role was, and not maybe sure where to play him, or maybe not trusting him a wee bit. And then he did find form just before he got injured this time round. But again, I don't think you can look at that and say, well, if we just put Hatate back in that team, all of a sudden everything's rosy again. I don't think that's the case. I think we've got a lot of work to do. I think there's a lot of responsibility here. I think the board have obviously made an absolute dog's dinner of the recruitment, particularly in the summer. We lost good players. We replaced them with players that the manager doesn't even see fit to put in squads. The quality drop-off has been so remarkably stark, and the manager has to take a lot of responsibility because the play is far too slow. The players don't look like they believe in what they're doing, and that's how you end up with these results that we've had recently, back-to-back league defeats. But more worryingly, like the likes of the draw at Easter Road and even the defeat at Kilmarnock, you can look at that and say, do you know what, those sometimes happen in a season, but these cheap points at home just can't happen. That is not league winning form, and we've got to sort it as quickly as possible. And as I say, that performance last weekend seems to me to point towards something deeper. That generally doesn't happen when things are good. I know that you can lose any football match, but the manner we lost that game in last week wasn't good at all. So there's a lot of work to do for everybody. But tomorrow, as I say, we've just got to make sure that we get back to winning ways. And as I say, try and rebuild some confidence, so we can make the most of these 3 or 4 games we've got left before that winter break. Right, let's get to the team. And we'll start in goals. And this is going to be difficult to go through this because there's so many positions in the park where we know we need improvements and we've got players really, really underperforming. But the situation is that they're going to have to play tomorrow because we've got an even less quality replacement for them, or they just have to play. So Joe Hart will play in goals. He had a really difficult afternoon last weekend. Not commanding on cross balls. He punched 3 or 4 crosses that he really should have caught, and I feel bad for him because Joe Hart's been a good signing for Celtic. We could all see in the summer that it was a position the club had to strengthen in. They didn't do that, and Joe Hart now is really low in confidence. He was ironically cheered when he caught a cross in the second half last week, and he shouldn't be subjected to that. We should have sorted this in the summer, and Joe Hart shouldn't have to be in that position. He's going to have to play again tomorrow, but that is an example of the complacency in the Celtic ranks in terms of recruitment, that we haven't addressed these positions, that it seems plain to everybody that watches the team week in and week out, apart from anybody that actually works at Celtic, that we had to improve in these areas if we wanted to progress and get better this season. But we have regressed. We are still regressing. It might get worse before it gets better. And that's because we've let things like this simmer on and haven't addressed them and haven't brought in adequate quality replacements. Back 4, I'm going Johnston, Carter-Vickers, Scales and Taylor. I know there's the jury's out on most of these players, really. For Carter-Vickers, obviously not the jury out in terms of his ability, but his fitness level. We don't know where that's at. He's obviously got that strapping on his knee. He had the operation in the summer. Alistair Johnson looks way short of the player he was last season. Everybody knows my question marks about Liam Scales, and I think you could see them again in spells last weekend. I think we need a better centre half in there than Liam Scales. I'm sorry, but that's just the way of it. And Greg Taylor is another position at left back where people have been crying out for a long, long time for us to improve in that position. And it's another example of something the club have just let go on and on and on. And the one player they have brought in for £3.5 million, Bernabei, seems clear to everybody that he's not really cutting it, that he's not really good enough. And again, that will tell you everything about the recruitment in the last couple of seasons. And midfield, who knows really? Callum McGregor, Matt O'Reilly, and I'm going Bernardo, because can you put Turnbull in after that first half performance last weekend? I don't think you can. And the build up to the first Hearts goal, he's far too slow and weak in the challenge in midfield, and the ball goes wide and Hearts win a corner. Carter-Vickers flicks the cross out, and then obviously the corner comes in and Shanklin's unmarked at the back post. But it's that lack of intensity, that lack of work rate that we just can't have. So you can't make a case for David Turnbull starting this game. You can't make a case for Home because he's been in, and he was part of that Motherwell game at home where we were really, really poor. Bernardo, again, hasn't convinced either, but he hasn't played a lot of league games at all. I don't know if Iwata's fit. Maybe he could come back in, I suppose, for a game and a half. That maybe looked okay. Iwata in the deeper position and McGregor one forward. Maybe we'll go back to that. But if Iwata isn't available to start the game, I think it'll be Bernardo, because I don't see how you can justify anybody else playing in that position. And that's a big problem for us. That's a huge problem, that lack of trust Brendan Rodgers has got. We've got so many midfield players. We've got so many wide players and so many central midfield players, and yet just about none of them have done enough to convince the manager that it's their position week in and week out. I know in the wide players we've had the injuries, but in central midfield there's 4 or 5 guys there who've got a position to grab, and the manager doesn't seem to trust any of them to start week in and week out. That's a big, big worry. But that's what I think it will be tomorrow. But as I say, who knows? It's MD's best guess right now who's going to play in that third midfield position. Links today in the media for Inter Milan with Matt O'Reilly. Also a number of Premier League clubs said to be interested as well. We just simply cannot afford to lose Matt O'Reilly in January. The one player who's put up any sort of credible level of performance consistently this season is Matt O'Reilly. He's the only player that can really hold his head high for this first half of the season, but we just can't afford to lose him. That would be a disaster. We've got a hard enough job in our hands trying to bring in 4 first-team ready quality players that can make an impact in a January window. We don't need to make it 5. If we lose Matt O'Reilly, I don't care what the transfer fee is. We can't lose him in January if we're serious about achieving the things we need to achieve this season. Front 3, Diaz and Maeda back, Lewis, Palma and Kyogo through the middle, obviously. I expect Palma and Maeda to maybe chop and change between right-hand side, left-hand side. Palma, again, didn't do enough. He's the one summer signing who we think has got something, but again, there's an inconsistency there. There's a lack of intensity, and I think we saw that again last weekend against Hearts, cutting inside all the time, moving the ball far too slowly all the time. I think when you look at some games where you're maybe underperforming, and you would turn to the likes of Jota, who would always take the ball and always try and make something happen. Even when Jota was having a bad game, he seemed like a constant threat. The ball's going wide to Palma last week, and you almost know nothing's going to come of it because of the intensity that he's playing at, the speed that he's playing at. So easy to defend against. He's got to do more. You could argue he's got to do a lot more, working back the pitch as well. But as I say, he's the one summer signing that we thought could maybe get pass marks. And I think in recent weeks the jury's really still out on him. So again, I don't want to go back to recruitment, but there you go. Diaz and Maeda is obviously a boost for us. He did really struggled in the second half last week. Again, the team's performing really poorly, and he's just back from 5 or 6 weeks out injured. But I'd expect him to get better, and if nothing else, he's going to bring a bit of pace. He's going to bring a bit of intensity, hopefully, to the closing down, which you wouldn't expect us to have to do too much of tomorrow against Livingston. You expect him to defend deep, but also going forward, and hopefully when we're progressing the ball up the pitch, we can find Maeda and he can stay wide. I think Mikey Johnson last weekend, of all his faults, and I think that is it over, as if it wasn't already for Mikey Johnson. I said a couple of weeks ago, getting these run of starts was the last chance after the last chance for Johnson. Last weekend, it was certainly. I don't think we can see him again in a Celtic shirt, Johnson. But one of the things he wasn't doing enough was staying wide. He kept coming towards the ball and closing down the space when the likes of Alistair Johnson was trying to progress the ball up the pitch. Again, too easy to defend against. I feel like the game is too slow and a bit too narrow at times. I feel like we need more pace, we need more width, and hopefully Maeda can provide that. Kyogo's poor form continues. He has one absolutely glaring chance, obviously, in the first couple of minutes of the second half that you'd expect him to put away. I thought at the time he had a doubt in his mind about whether Xander Clark was going to come for it, but seeing it back, I don't even think it was that. I just think he just misses it. He just puts puts his right foot up to try and get something on it and just totally misjudges the flight of the ball. No getting away from his poor form, the poor form across the team, and I think the system that isn't playing to his strengths has sort of worn him down recently. Hopefully tomorrow he can find a goal from somewhere, and we can create a damn sight more chances than we did last weekend. I think so often watching a poor Celtic performance back in terms of highlights, you see some promising signs, you see good chances, and it can maybe tell you a story about the game that on another day if we just put the chance in, but that was not the case last week. We created next to nothing really. Shots for long range, which tell you everything about the team's belief in their ability to play their way into the box and create real good high quality goal scoring chances. There's a lot of work to do for this Celtic team, and it's got to start tomorrow. So there you go. Like this video, comment with your own thoughts on the team below. If you disagree, let me know. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back tomorrow outside Celtic Park with all of the full-time reaction, and we hope for a better outcome than last weekend. Cheers.